In this video, we're going to take a look at a brown ink by KWZ, their Brown number 2. I feel like there should be a poop joke there, so insert your own. As always, there's timestamps down below so you can skip around, but if you've got the time, I'd appreciate you checking out the entire video. Also, down in the description is a link to the brown ink playlist, so if you wanted to see more, you could find those there. I'm an ink guy, and let's get into the first writing sample done on 90 GSM Clairfontaine. No bleeding, no ghosting. No feather, no spread, no shading for the stub or for the medium, but we have a couple of darker spots that occur with the extra fine. The extra fine is quite a bit lighter than the stub, and the medium, darker than the extra fine, is still much lighter than the stub. The extra fine took 16 seconds to dry, while the medium took 25. Scrubby for both gave no color variation, and we only got a light peppering of dark spots in the extra fine. The smear test says you could likely recover if you smeared while you were writing. To have a range of experience with this ink, all of the writing samples are done with a Jinhao 159 with a 1.1 stub, a Jinhao X450 with a medium, and a Jinhao X750 with an extra fine. Then, a TWSBI VAC 700 with a Fountain Pen Revolution broad nib was inked up, used for a day, and used to take the notes for this video. The next writing sample is done on 52 GSM Tomoe River. We have no bleeding, but we get some minor ghosting with a very thin paper. We have no feather, spread, and no shading. The extra fine's quite a bit lighter than the stub. The medium's the same tone as the stub. Extra fine took 23 seconds to dry, while medium took 34. Scrubby for both give no color variation, and we're not getting it in the writing. And the smear test, I do not think you could recover if you smeared while you were writing. I agree with Vita. There's a lot to learn by doing multiple chromatographies. The one on the left is done the way it's supposed to be done. A line of ink is put down, and then it's put into water for 10 to 15 seconds. And we see a very nice blue at the bottom. It is at the beginnings of forming a line, and a bunch of it moves up. Then we get a little bit of brown shows up, and a very orange leaning red at the top. The one on the right is let dry for 10 minutes before it's put into water, and a lot of that blue is very much staying in that line. A little of it's pushing up, and we see little squeaks of that orange popping out underneath the red, meaning I think what we're seeing is red and orange as a dye there. But we can expect a little bit of resistance with this ink. The next writing sample is done on 80 GSM Rhodia dot pad. No bleeding, no ghosting. We have no feather, no spread, no shading. No shading within the individual writings, though the extra fine is certainly lighter than the medium, and the medium's the same tone as the stub. The extra fine took 18 seconds to dry, and the medium took 27. Scrubby for both show no color variation. We're not getting it in the writing, and the smear test, you stand a strong chance of recovery if you smear while you're writing. Resistance tests are done to see how this ink could be expected to perform on the page, and more importantly, how hard it may be to clean from your pen. The smear's allowed to dry for 3 days before testing it. Looking at the highlighter, it performed much better than I was kind of expecting based on how much was still moving. I feel safe using it in a note-taking situation if I needed to go back and highlight. Water was the real surprise. It's really removing all of this ink from the paper, and given a little more time, I think it would get the rest of it. I kind of expected some of that blue to hang around longer, but it only took water to get this out of my pen. Now, pen flush does everything that water does, nothing more. You can't do more than remove it all. In the 1/3 bleach solution, you're not going to need it, but it does completely obliterate it. The next writing sample is done on life paper. No bleeding, no ghosting. We get no feather, no spread, no shading for the stub, no shading for the medium, but the extra fine has a light peppering of darker spots that occur. The extra fine itself is much lighter than the medium, which is the same tone as the stub. Extra fine took 15 seconds to dry, while the medium took 21. Scrubby for both give us no color variation, though we do get that light peppering in the extra fine. Smear test says you could likely recover if you smeared while you were writing. For the inks tested, the average viscosity was 2.5, with a realm of normal being from 2.1 to 2.9. KWZ's Brown number 2 has a viscosity of 2, so it is a little bit wetter than normal. If you're interested in how the viscosity tests are done and all of that kind of stuff, then down in the description are links to that video, or a link to that one video. Up next is Apica CD paper. No bleeding, no ghosting. We have no feather, no spread, no shading in any of the writing. The extra fine does come in much lighter than the stub or the medium that are the same tone. The extra fine took 11 seconds to dry while the medium took 17. Scrubby for both give no color variation. We're not getting it in the writing, and the smear test says you could recover if you smeared while you were writing. For the inks tested, the average dry time was 17 seconds, and the realm of normal was 13 to 21 seconds. KWZ's Brown number 2 has an average dry time of 24 seconds, so be patient that it takes a little bit longer than normal to dry. The last writing sample is done on Franklin Christoph paper. No bleeding, no ghosting. We have no feather, no spread, no shading in any of the writing. The extra fine, as it has been, is much lighter than the medium or the stub that are the same tone. The extra fine took 9 seconds to dry while the medium took 15. Scrubby for both give us no color variation, and we're not getting it in the writing. And the smear test, you might be able to recover if you smear while you're writing. Instead of finding inks that look like KWZ's Brown number 2, I'd prefer to find an ink that complements its color on the page. I went with a blue ink by Levenger, their Blue Bahama. Now, if you'd prefer a different complement color, then down in the description are links to those playlists. So what do I think of KWZ's Brown number 2? The swatch looks kind of red. Thankfully, the writing looks much more brown, a very dark brown with almost no shading, and a tone too dark for me. Not an unpleasant tone at all, though. Just not the brown that I'm running to get a bottle of. So what nib and pen give the best writing experience with this ink? I'm not a fan of its darkest tone, and I really do like the shading that it gives. And in order to get that, I use a medium flow fine. It gives a nice tone with a very nice peppering of dark spots throughout almost all of its writing. I hope you got something out of this video, and in the next video, we're going to take a look at Ackerman's number 16.